cell phone as you began to notice this incident involving Mr. Floyd and the police?
Well, as you guys seen that on the security thing that I had my phone.
Right, you had your phone. Did you do anything with your phone?
Like recording it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I'd like you to do first, before we get to the point where you start recording, just explain to the jury what you saw after you noticed the police officers putting Mr. Floyd in the car.
I don't remember.
Okay.
I can't think right now.
Well, you indicated that you began recording with your cell phone. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And during the time that you've been speaking to the police about this, you've provided your cell phone recordings to law enforcement. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
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 All right. And there were a total of 7 cell phone recordings that you personally took. Is that correct?
Yes.
You've reviewed each of those cell phone recordings, correct?
Yeah.
And those cell phone recordings, do they fairly and accurately depict what you saw on the street that day?
Yeah.
And 2 of those cell phone recordings were actually made from inside the store, correct?
Yes.
And then the rest were outside of the store.
Yeah.
Now, those cell phone recordings, the individual clips, have been marked and disclosed to counsel as exhibits 2 through 8. You wouldn't know that, but they have. And at this time, I'm going to offer exhibits 2 through 8. Yeah.
Any objection?
No, you're
2 through 8 are received.
And then, Ms. Euler, you also had an opportunity to review a surveillance video. Is that right?
Yes.
And the surveillance video, for the record, is Exhibit 11. Having reviewed that video, did that video, fairly and accurately capture things that you observed when you were working at Speedway on the 25th?
Yes.
Okay. And then you were able to review that surveillance video in a format in which all of your cell phone videos, or I guess I should say 6 of the 7 cell phone videos, had been spliced into or put next to the surveillance video, correct?
Yes.
And that kind of gives a perspective of when those individual videos were shot. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then the combination of the 6 videos that we've just received and Exhibit 11, which has been offered and received, would that composition better help you and assist you in explaining your testimony to the jury?
Yes.
All right. And that, for the record, is Exhibit 9. I offer Exhibit 9.
Any objection? 9 is received.
And at this time, I'm going to go ahead and publish Exhibit 9. I ask you to take Exhibit 1 down. And when I say publish, I mean I'm going to play it, and at times I'm going to stop and pause and have you explain some things. All right?
Okay. Okay.
All right. If we could begin publishing Exhibit 9, please. And I believe we're paused at 7 seconds. At this point, you can see, and I'm going to place a circle around the officers. You see them there?
Yes.
And are those the people that you saw interacting with the person you now know to be Mr. Floyd?
Yep.
And your first interaction that you noticed was actually across the street by the Dragon Walk. Is that right?
Yes.
Now, as Mr. Floyd's being taken over the car, I think that we will soon hear your first recording. So if we can resume play.
Always some shit going on over here.
after you made that short recording, and that was you, I suppose, narrating.
Yes.
Okay. After you were narrating that portion, you continued to watch.
Yes.
Now, at this time, Ms. Euler, did you notice any bystanders, anybody in the street?
No.
We're going to be approaching 8:16 and 30 seconds. Ms. Euler, were you continuing to watch the events as you were working the cash register at Speedway at this time?
I believe so, yes.
All right, now we've paused at about 8:17, and at some point, did you notice some other police officers arrive on the scene?
I think so.
Well, let's resume play here. Okay, and let's pause. Now, at this time, I'm showing you two other individuals who are joining the first two officers that you saw. You noticed those?
Yeah.
And what did you see those two officers do after they arrived?
I don't remember.
Let's continue. From your vantage point inside the Speedway, were you able to hear anything outside?
No.
All right, let's pause here for a moment, and we're at 8:18 and 10 seconds. Now, as best you can, describe for the jury what you recall seeing the officers do with Mr. Floyd prior to getting to this point.
Before this point?
Before this point, for example, did you see Mr. Floyd get into a vehicle?
Like off of what we just watched?
What do you recall seeing with Mr. Floyd and the squad car just before we get to this point?
Like when they drag him out?
Okay. All right, let's resume. Now, we're paused at about almost 8:19. I asked you previously about bystanders and noticing bystanders. At some point, as you made these observations, did you see a crowd of bystanders gather?
Not till like after.
After what?
Like after they did yeah.
Okay. So at this point, you're not seeing a crowd either in the immediate area or across the street at the Speedway?
I'm trying to remember. I don't remember.
Okay. Well, let's resume play. No, you keep going. I'm going to pause here. And this is at 8:20 and 20 seconds. Can I ask you some questions about some people, again, some bystanders in the area? Do you know who this person in the lower left corner wearing sandals and shorts and a black shirt is?
No.
Don't recognize him, never seen him before?
No.
Do you know the person in the dark shirt, hooded sweatshirt, and the blue pants?
No.
Never met her before either?
No.
Okay. Or how about the child behind her in the green shirt?
No.
Not familiar with her either?
No.
Okay. If you please resume. I'm going to pause for a moment here. Do you recognize that person, that officer? Do you recall seeing an officer interacting with a group of bystanders who would later gather?
I think so.
Can you physically describe that person as best you can remember?
I don't really know. It's been so long.
Do you recall previously talking about a bald police officer?
I think in one of my videos I was talking to a person.
Okay. a bald officer. Do
Yeah.
you recall, as you sit here today, what the bald officer did?
I think he was like yelling at people, like before or after this.
Do you also recall describing a tall officer?
Yeah.
What did the tall officer do?
I think he was like, I don't remember. There's so much.
Let's resume play.
There's always some shit going on.
Pause for a moment. Now, what we heard there that was imposed at the same time as the surveillance video was your second recording. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Yes.
And again,
Yes.
that was your voice when you said there are always some.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Had you continued to watch these events out the window that entire time?
Did I watch it out like outside?
From inside?
I think I went outside to smoke a cigarette.
All right. I'm going to ask the play to resume and ask you to pay particular attention to your video on the right side. Okay? Freeze. Yeah. Go a little bit further. Stop. All right. Now, I'm showing you what appears to be a reflection. You
Mm-hmm.
recognize that?
Yeah.
Who's that?
That's me.
Okay. So that's you recording the events reflected in the window, correct?
Yep.
So based on that, would you agree that you were inside the speedway at the time this particular recording was made?
Yes.
Resume, please. Pause. Now, can you please explain to the jury why did you continue to record what you were seeing here?
Because I always see the police, they're always messing with people, and it's wrong and it's not right.
I'm going to then direct your attention to the right side of the screen as well. You say that you briefly turned your camera away from the officers in the squad car towards the area that's right by the Dragon Walk. Is that right?
Yeah.
And can you tell the jury what you see here?
I see people standing there, but that's not why I shifted the camera,
Can you explain why you shifted the camera?
because that's where it started from.
Okay, so when you say that's where it started from, I think your description initially was that there were some officers who were, to use your words, messing with Mr. Floyd.
Yep.
Okay, and this is the area in which they were messing with Mr. Floyd?
Yep. When it started.
I'd like to resume play again, please. Let's pause for a moment, and you can see that that would have been your second recording has stopped. And at this point, we're continuing to watch the surveillance video. Please resume. We could freeze here. Let it go just a little further. Stop. All right. So again, I've already asked you about some of the people in the crowd, and you said you didn't know them. I want to add some of folks. There's a person in a white T-shirt. Do you recognize that person?
I don't know that person.
Never seen that young woman before?
Not before like this.
Okay. And then I think walking by, I don't know if you noticed, there was a couple with a child. Had you ever seen them before?
No.
And then there's a gentleman here in a dark hooded sweatshirt. Had you ever seen that person before?
No.
Please resume. Now, at some point, you indicated that you'd gone outside of the store to smoke a cigarette. Is that right?
Yep.
You continue to watch these events unfold as you were outside of the store?
Yep.
As you were watching from outside the store, did you see any of the bystanders interact with police officers?
I think they were like yelling at each other. I don't really know what they said. I was kind of too far away.
Couldn't make out any specific words?
No.
Do you recall seeing a woman with a black shirt and a white headband?
No. This was like a year ago. A long time ago.
Go ahead and resume. All right. If you could pause. All right. I'd asked you about seeing a woman with a black shirt and a white headband. I'm wondering if now looking, if this refreshes your memory at all about this person.
No.
All right. From outside, then, at your vantage point, outside of the Speedway, you began what is now your fourth recording, and I think for the record, that starts at about was it 8:25:26? Please resume.
What happened?
I don't know. I know that the tall dude that's leaning on his feet, they had him in the other side of the car, and then he pulled him out on the ground.
You could pause for a moment. Right. Whose voice was that?
That was mine.
Okay. And were you describing to someone who was standing next to you what you just witnessed earlier?
Yeah.
Okay. If you could resume, please. pause. It seems that you've spent a lot of time watching this encounter,
Yeah.
and you were continuing to occasionally record.
Yeah.
Okay. If you could resume, please. If you could pause. Did you hear that ambulance in the background?
Mm-hmm.
At some point, do you recall an ambulance actually arriving?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. As best you can remember, can you describe what you saw after the ambulance got there?
I think the person was going on a stretcher.
If we could resume, please. If you'd stop. And at this point, you can see that the ambulance has arrived, and there's a ambulance worker coming out of the passenger side of the vehicle. Is that right?
Yeah.
In the time that you've been watching up to this point, did you see this individual ever get up from the first position he was in when he first went down?
I don't remember.
Please resume. Stop. All right. So you see that the street camera has now changed positions. Is that right?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
do you recognize that person?
That's me.
That's you. Okay. So that's you, and you're holding your cell phone.
Yep.
And that's you recording, so we can give the jury a good idea of where you were at the time you were taking that footage. Right? And that's when the ambulance arrived. You continued to observe. Please resume. Do you ever personally observe the officers get up off of George Floyd?
I don't think so. I think no.
If you could pause, back up about 2 seconds.
I think I was more so like I was recording it, but I was also like trying not to get hit by the cars coming in the gas station.
All right, understood. All right, if you could resume then, please. If you can pause, you can see the stretcher is fully out here. Is that right?
Yeah.
And then I want to draw your attention again to the last officer closest to the head of the individual on the ground. Did you see him change position at this point?
No.
Okay, please resume. Your final recording as Mr. Floyd was taken from the ground, loaded onto the stretcher, and placed in the back of the ambulance. if you could pause, please. And then you see that at approximately 8:29 and 29 seconds p.m., Mr. Floyd is fully placed into the back of the ambulance. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. Please resume. And at that point, if you would pause, please, at 8:29 and about 52 seconds, I believe, 52, 53 seconds, you stopped recording. Is that right?
Yep. Yes.
Okay. And you can take that down now. What did you see after the ambulance pulled away?
There was just a bunch of people yelling and fighting, and I didn't really understand why, but now obviously we know why.
What did you do after you stopped? After you stopped watching outside?
I went back to work.
And that would have been around about 8:30.
I don't remember.
Do you remember when your shift ended?
10 o'clock.
And so you worked up until 10 o'clock.
Yep.
Do you recall what you saw after you left work that day?
Tape. There was a bunch of tape everywhere, and they made me instead of going down Chicago to go home, they made me go around and down the street, all the way down, I think 35th.
Because the scene had crime scene tape around it,
Yeah.
and you weren't able to access it. Did you make another recording of that crime scene tape?
I think I did.
At this time, I believe we've already received Exhibit 7, and I'd like to publish Exhibit 7, please. Yeah, that'd be good. Well, you know what? I'm almost finished here.
Go ahead.
Yeah, if we could just publish Exhibit 7. Oh, no, I'm sorry. That's Exhibit 8. All right. If you could pause, please. And Ms. Euler, you described the scene being taped up with crime scene tape and you weren't able to access it. Does this show the area where the crime scene tape was?
Yes.
All right, if you could resume play, please. And stop. All right, and you can take that down. What did you do then after you made that recording?
I went home.
And at some point, you were contacted by police officers, is that right?
Yeah.
They talked to you about what happened, took a statement from you,
Yeah.
and you voluntarily provided the videos to them, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Council's going to have some questions for you, but I think we're going to take a break first.
Let's take our 20-minute break. Let's reconvene at 3:25. Just a reminder, you're still under oath. Mr. Nelson.
Good afternoon, ma'am. I don't know if that's you or me here. So I'd like to ask you a few follow-up questions, if that's okay.
Okay.
If the court would, I'm going to show you Exhibit 1, as we had before. And I think that you indicated that you were about right there, right? When
Yeah.
you first observed everything?
Yeah.
All right. Now, can you just describe for me generally, like, the inside of the speedway? Like, would you have been facing customers, looking out the window to your right? Would you have been standing forward and looking out the window?
It would be like to my side.
Okay. So if you were in the subway area, or excuse me, the speedway area right here, in this area that you're talking about, like, your back would have been facing that way?
No. Yes.
Yeah. And so when you observed what happened over in this area, you would have been looking back over your right shoulder.
Yes.
Okay. And that's when you first observed, that's when you first observed the police interacting with Mr. Floyd, right?
Yes.
And you observed him get handcuffed or he was in handcuffs at that point, right?
Yes.
And you observed them walk him back across the street towards the area here where the squad car was.
Yes.
Correct? Now, again, you said that you were working, you were taking care of customers, things of that nature, right?
Yep.
And obviously we know that you didn't film the entirety of the incident from the beginning to the end, right?
Right.
And that's because you were working, right?
Yeah.
In part, at least. And I think as we saw from your video, there were cars coming in to get gas, there were people coming into the store, that type of thing was happening, right?
Yeah.
All right. And you ultimately, you remember that you gave a statement to an agent with the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension.
Yep.
His name was Brent Peterson. Would you disagree if I told you that that was on May 28th of 2020?
Okay. I don't remember the.
Sure.
Yeah.
We have no reason to, it was within a couple of days of this incident, right?
Yeah.
And do you recall telling Agent Peterson, one of the things that you didn't understand was why they took him back out of the car?
Yeah.
Because based on what you observed Mr. Floyd get into the car, both doors were shut, correct?
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, according to your video, the taller officer just pulled him out of the back of the squad car.
Yep.
All right. Now, you also, do you recall testifying or telling Agent Peterson that the people in this area here, there was a female cop?
I don't remember. Oh.
All right. Yeah, sorry. Do you remember a female police officer being there?
I don't remember. This was so long ago.
Okay. Would it refresh your recollection to review, well, did you ever have an opportunity to review a transcript or an audio recording of your interview with Agent Peterson?
Say that again?
Prior to coming in and testifying, were you ever given a copy of your transcript?
I seen it. Or heard it.
Did you read it?
No.
Okay. Would it help refresh your recollection to look at a copy of your transcript?
Not really.
Okay. So you don't remember ever telling Agent Peterson that there was a female officer on scene?
It could have been, yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot of officers.
All right. Now, you testified that you took the first two videos from inside the speedway.
Yeah.
And then at some point you went out into kind of in the middle of the parking lot area, right?
Yep.
Or the entrance where cars would be coming in to get to the gas pumps.
Yep.
You were out there on your break, right?
Yep.
And I think we saw, based on your video, that what you did is you sort of zoomed in so you could get a closer camera view, right?
Yep.
And you zoomed it to the maximum that your camera would allow you to zoom in.
Yep.
And from where you were standing, ultimately when you were outside, you had the opportunity to make observations about what the officers were doing with Mr. Floyd, right?
Okay.
I mean, would you agree with that?
Yep.
And you had the opportunity to make observations about kind of what else was going on, right?
Yeah.
In fact, one of the videos you actually had a conversation with someone else, right?
Yep.
So if you were standing across the street from where Mr. Floyd and the police officers were interacting, you would have one view, but you would agree that when we look at a camera, that's just kind of one perspective, right?
I mean, I guess, but there's multiple cameras though.
I understand. I guess what I'm saying is that when you're recording, your camera is only going to capture what's out in front, right?
Yep.
But when you're recording, you said you were, looking, making sure you didn't get hit by a car, right? So you have the ability to turn your head from left to right. You can look up, you can look down, you can talk to people, and you can look around, right?
Okay. Yeah.
But your camera is still in that one fixed position.
Yep.
All right. So you were able to make observations. As this incident progressed, would you agree that more and more people started stopping and watching what was going on?
Yes.
There were some people standing in front of you. There were some people standing to your right. Recall that?
Yep.
And then obviously there were the people that were closer over by where the officers were as well, right?
Yeah.
And then even on the kitty corner from where you were, right? There were people standing there watching.
Yeah.
And if you went to your right on the other side, there were people standing there watching, right?
I think so.
Right. And cars were driving by and buses were driving by, right? And sometimes cars, we see in your video, they would stop for quite some period of time and then drive off, right?
Yeah.
And would you also agree that as this incident progressed, the crowd of people started becoming more and more vocal?
Like, what do you mean? Like,
Well, they started yelling more.
I think so.
Right. So, like that first video when you step outside and there's fewer people, there's not as many people yelling, right?
Yeah.
But by the end, when the ambulance takes Mr. Floyd away, there's a fairly large crowd out there, right?
Right.
And there's a lot of people yelling.
Okay.
I mean, would you agree with that?
Yeah.
And those people, some of those people, you could tell were upset, right?
Yeah.
I think you said that a lot of people were yelling and fighting, right?
Yeah.
So you can get a sense that people were angry.
Okay.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
And that feeling of anger is different when you're there and watching it than when it is when you're here talking about it in the courtroom.
I don't think so.
You don't think
I
so?
think if you're still upset about the situation, you're still going to be upset about it.
Understood. But in that moment, you would agree when there's people yelling and there's people driving by and there's people honking, right? That's a different feeling than, you may still be upset here today in court, but it's a much different feeling now than it is then.
Okay.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
All right. And ultimately, again, you took these various cell phone videos, you provided them to law enforcement voluntarily, right?
Yep.
And then you went back inside, you finished your shift, and then when you left, the scene was taped off because it was a crime scene, right?
Yep.
I have no further questions.
Any redirect?
Yes, sir. So when you saw the officers bring Mr. Floyd across the street, did you see Mr. Floyd struggle with or resist the officers?
No.
And when the officers first brought Mr. Floyd to the ground and you saw the 3 officers on top of him, there wasn't a large crowd at that time, was there?
I don't think so, no.
In fact, that didn't happen until much later, correct?
Yeah.
And you never saw the officers get up off of Mr. Floyd until after the ambulance arrived, after the stretcher was pulled out. Is that right?
Yep, that's what it said in the video. Well, shows in the video.
All right, nothing further.
All right, thank you. You may step down. Mr. Frank?
Your Honor, the state would call Donald Williams to the stand.
You can stand behind the chair for a second. Yes, sir. Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm on the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do, sir.
Have a seat.
Yes, Your Honor.
And just to test out the microphone, if you could give us your full name, spelling each of your names.
Full name is Donald Wynn Williams II. Donald last name Williams II.
Thank you. Mr. Frank?
Good afternoon, Mr. Williams.
Good afternoon.
Can you tell the jurors roughly how old are you?
33.
Okay. And what do you do for a living?
I'm an entrepreneur and a professional fighter. And a father.
And a what?
And a father.
And that takes up probably as much time as all the others.
Yes, it does.
So you, by entrepreneur, you have some of your own companies that you run,
That is correct, Your Honor.
various businesses.
Correct.
And tell the jury, if you would, sort of where you live, not your address, but the city or town where you live.
I'm in a unique situation, but I do have a place in Roseville in South Minneapolis.
And your place in South Minneapolis, well, are you familiar with Cup Foods?
That is correct.
And how far is your place from Cup Foods, roughly?
Not too far from Cubs.
Good enough. Good enough.
So literally, yeah, like on the next block,
Yep.
Not too far down.
So how long have you lived in the Twin Cities area, the Minneapolis area?
Minneapolis, Twin Cities, ever for 33 years, pretty much my whole life. I'm a city kid.
Okay. And Mr. Williams, well, before I forget to ask you, you've done some work in the security field.
That is correct. Been working in security for over 10 years.
And what does that mean? What do you do to work in security?
As far as security, private security, worked at the clubs, at Pichaluches, different clubs downtown Minneapolis. Worked at Allied Security for a year before the situation as well. And I've done private security for the Mystic Lake kids as well. So I've been working security for quite a few years.
And so that means everything from, I suppose, being what we might think of as a bouncer to just
Yeah, so from being a bouncer to a private security, like I said, being a door guy, to like escorting some of the high profile athletes as well too. Some of the comedians that came into Minnesota, and like I said, some of the high profile kids from Mystic Lake that families own Mystic Lake. I have done multiple private securities for them as well on different events throughout Minnesota.
So for doing that job, do you have to learn some use of force?
Correct. Well, my uniqueness is I'm a wrestler. from high school that developed into martial artist. So that's what gave me more of the opportunity to be able to do the private security and things like that, and just started connections from the mixed martial arts world, from my previous manager to just different friends inside of my circle.
And when you're doing security, do you sometimes have the opportunity to work with Minneapolis police officers?
That is correct. I have worked side by side with Minneapolis Police Departments and Minneapolis Police since I was 21 years old. And again, I'm 33 years old right now. I work downtown. Like Picha Luce brought me in a couple of years ago when one of the top guys, Antonio, left to go to Vegas and work out in Vegas. Picha Luce reached out to me and put me at the door, and I was able to control my city because I have a relationship with both sides of the city. No matter if it's business, streets, friends, different areas. My connection is pretty broad to the Twin Cities, so I'm able to talk certain people out of certain situations downtown from there. So yeah, that's fine. Yep.
Okay, so working security, you sometimes work with Minneapolis police officers who are also working security.
That is correct, off duty.
And sometimes when they're called in as police officers to an incident.
That is correct.
And since you mentioned the mixed martial arts, let's talk about that a little bit. You mentioned also wrestling.
That is correct.
And when did you start in the sport of wrestling?
I started in 7th grade, Your Honor. Or, sir, 7th grade.
Yeah, I haven't heard that yet.
Yeah, right. Hey, soon.
Somebody might be upset if you start calling me. But so you started wrestling at a very young age.
Correct.
And wrestling as a sport, what kind of things do you got to learn if you want to be a good wrestler?
That is correct.
What kind of things do you need to learn?
You need to learn the mentality of being a wrestler. It's a hard pace, different grind. It's not really a sport; it's a lifestyle. You got to really learn the technique of wrestling, and then it's different. You got to learn the different atmospheres of wrestling as well. You could be the top guy wrestling in an arena where everyone hates you, and you're wrestling against someone that everybody wants you to win. So you got to be able to absorb all that and be able to move forward and perform. So those three things.
And how about the physical aspects of it? What kind of things do you need to do to be a good wrestler physically and to beat your opponent?
Yeah, you have to be able to condition your body. You have to be able to do different circuits, different workouts, running. Just conditioning your body to be able to be an elite wrestler.
Is there a lot of using your weight to control the other person?
That is right, correct. When you first start wrestling, you don't really understand the weight shifting. You're kind of like falling all over the place. But then eventually you learn how to control your weight off of someone else's movement and body movement and things like that. So you know the different pressures and different just movement. And it's called flow wrestling. You eventually learn how to flow wrestle when it comes to that, and it's just like not being so resistant to everything.
And so you're saying flow, F-L-O-W, not?
Like flow, F-L-O. Yeah, flow, W.
Wasn't sure if you said float or flow. So.
Flow,
Got it.
F-L-O-W.
So would you tell the jurors then about your wrestling career?
Yeah, I wrestled Minneapolis Edison in high school. Again, I started in 7th grade, so I had to fast track and catch up to all the kids that was already better than me because most kids started at 4 years old. So coming into Edison, they were a really good program at the time, probably the best one since 2006. I was able to transfer in, crack the lineup at Edison, and I was a multiple-time state entrant, a couple times sections champs, and I went on and wrestled in college as well at DCTC. I wrestled there for 1 year, and then went over and wrestled at RCTC, which is another junior college. And from there, I just been growing into wrestling, learning different wrestling. I coach youth programs since I got out of high school, and I currently coach my kids right now. They currently wrestle in different friends' kids as well, and help them develop their skills and to do different private lessons and things like that with them. So this all started from me being a 7th grader, playing in the backyard with some friends, and they.
It's really good now. Stop here.
That's fine. He asked me to explain.
Yeah, but we're going to shorten it up a little bit because that's when you can ask you more questions.
Yes, sir.
It also helps our court reporter who is taking everything down on a stenographic machine.
Correct.
That way she can get a break between. So,
Yes, Your Honor.
thank you.
So I'm going to back you up a little bit.
Yes, sir.
Just to ask you a couple specific questions. You mentioned DCTC.
Correct.
Can you Describe for us what that is. What
Yeah,
that is.
Dakota County Technical College.
Okay, so it's like a junior college
It's a
wrestling.
junior college, correct.
And the other was RCTC?
Yep, Rochester Community College.
And so you wrestled at the college level.
Correct.
Then at some point, did you take up mixed martial arts?
Yes. About sophomore year at Rochester, I'm in a unique situation. I have my kid with me. So we kind of shifted towards getting our grades together and trying to create a plan to be able to wrestle in college eligibility-wise. And I end up finding martial arts from different friends like Marcus Levesters, Jack Zusila, Javari Veneer, and Carey, and things like that were my coaches that wrestled. And they wrestled and coached me, and they ended up jumping into martial arts. And I came back to visit and kind of fell into the martial arts world with them.
So let me just
Bro.
cut you off.
Yeah. So.
You've done a lot in mixed martial arts.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try and walk you through it a little bit.
Yep.
But what year was it that you started seriously training in mixed martial arts?
About let's see, 22, like 09-ish, like 09.
Have you been involved in it ever since?
I've been involved in it ever since, correct.
Continue to be involved in it?
Yeah, continue to be involved in it. As of the last 9 months, I have not been training.
Okay. And ever done the mixed martial arts, what we call it, a fight, professionally?
Correct. Amateur. I got 10 amateur fights and about close to 20 professional fights.
So about 2009 you start,
Correct.
through 2020, correct?
Correct.
How often during that time period are you in the gym training?
Us Monday through Friday. Like I devoted my life to mixed martial arts, and my kids' life to mixed martial arts. So it's a 40 hours or more a week job at the Minnesota Martial Arts Academy. I was in there majority in the mornings from 10 a.m. to sometimes 3 in the afternoon, training for hopefully a fight.
So the Mixed Martial Arts Academy, that's the business where you trained?
That is the gym I train at, correct.
And when you were training there, did you ever did you ever train with Minneapolis police officers who were there?
Correct.
Describe that for the jury, please.
Not everybody they don't always let you know that they're a cop or CIA agent or FBI agent, but we all kind of link together because they're trying to learn how to be able to defend different chokes or be able to detain different people. So Greg Nelson, which is the head professor there, he's a unique guy. He's been able to work close with the military and the Army and the combative team. So we get a lot of Army combative people coming in and training with us just so they can learn how to, defend themselves in war, I'm taking. And so I've been training next to some of them for, like I said, a decade.
And some of them are Minneapolis police officers training there.
Yep, that is correct. And they're not all Minneapolis Police Department. They're from all different precincts, all different backgrounds of the law enforcement.
So when you're training in mixed martial arts, is part of the ultimate goal to get the other person to submit?
Yeah, that's the goal of it. Everybody gets into martial arts for different reasons. As you're rolling and understanding it, yes, your whole thing is to be able to get the person to submit when you do put a choke or a different submission on them.
So let me talk to you about that. So you're trained on what are called chokeholds.
Correct.
And what kind of training do you receive to do a chokehold?
You go into a basic class. They teach you the basic techniques of jiu-jitsu, how to be able to defend yourself from the back, how to be able to defend off of a choke, and how to be able to put someone in a choke as well. And those are some of the basics that we learn from them.
So if we talk about specifically chokeholds involving the neck,
Correct.
did you also have to learn about the structures in the neck that can lead to a chokehold?
Correct.
And
Different. There's air chokes and there's blood chokes and there's limb chokes.
so explain the first two.
Air choke is more of like choking someone. They still have air to breathe in there, and they're able to absorb it and feel it, and then you also have a choke where it's a blood choke where it specifically attacks the side of the neck and it particularly cuts off the circulation of your arteries and stops the different blood flowing from top of your head to the bottom of your head. And sometimes you could get in a blood choke and not know you're in a blood choke until you're unconscious.
In your training, have there been times when you've been rendered unconscious through a chokehold?
Correct. I have been submitted on a professional level in live matches, and I have over 30 jiu-jitsu submission matches where I have got caught in a submission before on a rear naked choke and a front choke. Only have been only choked out twice in the jiu-jitsu side, but on my martial arts, on the fighting side, I've been submitted maybe 3 times on a side choke.
So in that training, do they have to teach you what that's like so you know to avoid it?
Yes, correct. So it's a uniqueness. You have to kind of like be acceptable to being choked. Not normal people can just really get choked. You got to relax. You got to be able to breathe. You got to be able to let the choke happen, and you got to be able to know when to actually tap out on the choke, because you're in practice. You're not trying to put this person to sleep, but you're trying to get them to understand how it feels to be choked. So we do go back and forth choking each other. Sometimes you'll see white stars when you get choked, and it kind of like helps you understand, you know, when you went too far, you know. And some people choke tolerance is higher than normal, you know. Some are really low, where when you do put a blood choke, they're tapping right away, and some people will be able to absorb it and actually meditate there because they want to be able to be comfortable in the choke and be able to get out of it in live action.
So you use the term tap out, and what does that mean?
So tap out would be, for instance, so if I have you in a submission and I feel like it's getting to a certain point where it's not comfortable for me, I just tap my opponent, and my opponent releases his choke, and then we're back to grappling again. And you know, I catch him in a submission, and if he's not comfortable, he taps. And this goes for the neck, limbs, and all that, so you don't harm each other during practice.
What can happen, have you learned through your training and experience, if you don't tap out, if a choke goes too far?
If you don't tap out, you can lose consciousness, and you can develop different, I'm not a doctor, but somnies from your brain to your body because of lack of oxygen and things like that.
So we talked about that a lot, but I appreciate you sharing that with us.
Correct.
We'll come back to that in a little bit.
Yes, sir.
I want to take your attention back to May 25th of 2020. You remember that day?
Correct, I do.
And on that day, at some point, did you go to Cup Foods?
Correct.
And prior to going to Cup Foods that day, had you done any activities with, for instance, your son?
Correct. Yeah. So earlier that day, I just went fishing with some wrestling friends, wrestling family, me and my son, and we caught maybe 3 bass. Throughout that whole day of fishing, it was a beautiful day during the day, so everybody was out on the lake. So we went fishing and caught 3 bass. After we got done fishing, rolled around a little bit, had the fish in a little bowl on the side, you know, the boat swimming around the water, uncomfortableness. And once we got done fishing, we had to, you know, drain the water, take our fish, and find somewhere to actually transport our fish back home on a, you know, safe way, I guess, to their death. So we put them in a bag and tied them up, and we pretty much suffocated them on our way home for our ride.
So that you could enjoy them later.
Yeah, so we can actually cut them up, eat them, and freeze them, which are still in the freezer.
And so at some point then you decided to go to Cup Foods. Why did you decide to go there that day?
So I went to Cup Foods because I haven't cut a fish up in since I was about 23, working at a butcher at Solo grocery store. So me and the fish we were going through some things of watching this fish actually die and watching him lose his air and watching his eyes actually roll back in the back of his head. So after we got done cutting them up, me and my son was actually watching on a YouTube channel, trying to figure out how to actually cut the fish the proper way and make sure that we're doing it right, cutting the fins off, chopping the side of the head off, you know, filleting the fish. So after I got done doing that, I just needed air for myself. So I went to the store to go get something to drink at the time, and I kind of just snuck out from the family once I got done cutting the fish.
So did you drive there?
That is correct, I did drive.
Okay, I'm going to show you something we've already received as Exhibit 1 on the screen. Can you show Exhibit 1, please? Do you recognize what's depicted in that photograph?
Correct.
All right. And this is the intersection of 38th in Chicago where Cup Foods is, correct?
Correct.
And you will notice on the bench in front of you one of these little styluses, hopefully.
Correct.
And you can draw on this, and I'd ask you just to show the jurors where you drove up and where you parked.
Is it showing up? Do I gotta? Is it showing up on there or no?
I don't see it yet.
I don't see it either. Oh, there it goes. Came from that angle. So wow, I parked somewhere in here.
All right. So for the record, you drove down 38th Street towards Cup Foods and parked on 38th next to Cup Foods.
That is correct.
All right. And I'm going to show you some photographs to sort of help illustrate what you did that day, all right? And I'm going to first, Your Honor, offer Exhibit 18.
No objection.
18 is received.
Okay, can you put 18 up, please? Now, do you recognize this photograph?
Correct.
This is something we had shown to you before.
That is correct.
And who is that in the photograph?
That is Donald Wynn Williams II, which is me.
Okay. And is that you parked, the area where you parked on 38th?
That is correct.
And that's you walking up?
That is correct.
And can you describe for us what you're wearing, the sweatshirt that you're wearing?
Northside Boxing Club.
Okay. So that's not the academy where you train, that's just another club?
No, that is not. It's a youth gym for boxing.
And so when you decided to go to Cup Foods, did you get all dressed up and get ready for going out?
No, not at all.
Okay. This is just an outfit you threw on?
That is correct.
All right. When you were on your way to Cup Foods, did you grab your cell phone and take it with you?
That is correct.
You had it with you?
Yes, that is correct.
All right. And so after you got out of your car, as you walked up towards Cup Foods, did you notice any police cars in the area?
That is correct. I did.
Okay. And describe for the jurors then kind of what you saw as you're walking up.
As you can tell by my face expression, I was kind of like, oh, the police is here. And I noticed that there was 2 police squad cars out there. And I just had a look on my face like, oh, we're in the city, something else is going on. Should I get back to my car or not?
Okay. And what did you decide to do?
My energy just kept pushing me forward, and I kept walking.
Okay. And so you kept walking towards the store?
That is correct. I started walking towards Cub Foods entrance.
And did you end up going into Cup Foods?
No, I did not make it into Cub Foods.
Why not? What stopped you?
My energy stopped me, the surroundings stopped me, the energy of the air, just me as a person, if people know me personally. It's just the energy was off. I couldn't get in the door for some reason, and then once I realized why.
So when you came around, so Cup Foods sits on the corner, correct?
That is correct.
So 18 shows you walking up on the 38th Street side.
Correct.
When you get around the corner, what is it that starts to affect your energy and your decision to go in the store or not?
Yeah, so I was just sitting at the door, just like, man, there's so much going over here. Do I involve myself? Because I'm usually, I pay attention to my city. So I was contemplating with myself, do I involve myself or do I go inside the store? I started hearing different voices from people that they know, telling someone that they just calm down, everything's gonna be okay. And then I heard, some people saying that, I'm looking for some point for their mother. And I heard another voice just saying that, you should let him up and that he's not resisting arrest. And there's just certain things that just kept boop, 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 hitting me while I was standing there, like, should I go in the door or not?
And did you go into the store then?
I did not go into the store.
All right. So now I'm going to show you, well, first I will offer Exhibit 19.
Any objection?
No.
Anything received?
Put 19 up, please. And do you recognize what's depicted in this photograph?
That is correct.
And is that you then walking along Chicago?
That is correct, walking on Chicago.
All right. So when you get into this area, is this, well, what are you experiencing right here where you're walking along?
Again, like I said, I was just hearing different emotions, different comments, and at this point I just was kind of like observing. So I kind of like slowly trotted over there.
And we can see in Exhibit 19 there's a couple other people on the sidewalk here. Did you know any of those people as you walked up?
No, I did not know no one out there at all.
The first people that you see while you're there, well, you stayed at that area for quite a while, correct?
That is correct.
So the people that you first see as you're walking up, can you kind of describe how they looked or how they appeared to you, who they were?
Correct. Again, I don't know none of them. I just remember off of certain visualization that it was 3 people outside. It was an older guy, a younger lady, and maybe one more other gentleman out there. And yeah.
And then this photograph also shows in front of you a person with a green shirt. Do you remember seeing that person?
Not at all.
Okay.
Like she wasn't like in, she was there, but I didn't see her.
Okay. And so you, well, from where you are in this photograph, where did you go? What did you end up doing?
I believe I ended up probably standing next to this little spot right here where she's standing at a point. I probably was standing somewhere in here after I came from this way, and I just sat there and chilled right in this area for a second, observing like security officers do. I observed the scene first before I spoke.
And as you observed it, what are you seeing and hearing?
Well, once I get there, I hear an older guy saying, "It's gonna be okay, quit this and arrest. They're gonna get you up and put you in the car." And just hearing people, different people actually vocalizing their concerns to the officer, and hearing George on the ground pretty much pleading for his life, saying he's sorry, I can't breathe, I want my mom, just please let me up, and things like that.
So, while we still have Exhibit 19 up, can you show the jury after you got done observing, where did you go from there?
I've ended up somewhere in this vicinity throughout the whole time.
Okay. And so when you went over by the curb area there, what did you see happening on the ground behind the squad car?
Well, before I walked up, I noticed it was an officer standing right here, kind of pretty much dictating the crowd from only standing on this curb right here where they're at. Noticed that part right away. And then I finally noticed it's going to be on the opposite side, but I noticed George's head was kind of sticking out from the side of the car. And then I noticed Officer Chavez right here with his knee circulated on George's neck. But this is all happening on this side of the car.
All right, we'll get to that in just a second while we're still on this photograph.
Correct.
When you went over there initially, did you leave the curb and go onto the street?
There is a possibility that I was battling with myself to stay on the curb and throughout the time. Correct.
We know later you went into the street area, but when you first got there, did you stay on the curb?
Yeah, when I first got there, I stayed right here. I didn't move too much right there. I stayed here, and I might have stepped down once or twice back and forth, but I can't 100% remember.
And you saw an officer standing in that area you showed us before.
He was about like somewhere.
Did you learn later that officer's name?
Yeah, I read his badge. I read his badge. Can I say his name right now? No. But at the time, I think I called him by his name from his badge, just from visualization, reading his badge.
Was it Officer Tao?
Correct.
All right. And you were able to read that from his badge on his uniform?
That's how much respect I tried to give him at the beginning.
And so you saw him there.
Correct.
And what did you understand his role to be when you were observing?
He was a dictator. He dictated what went on the curb. He controlled the people. He controlled me, and he was the guy that let it go on while it went on.
Now, you mentioned Mr. Floyd.
Correct.
Where was this individual you referred to as Mr. Floyd?
Can you please repeat that?
Sure. Where was this individual that you have referred to as Mr. Floyd?
Mr. Floyd, again, was on this side of the car, angled down by the tire area in this area, but on this side of the car.
And at this time, prior to coming into court, did we show you a photograph of the officer with Mr. Floyd on the ground?
Can you please repeat that?
Yeah, prior to court today, did we show you a photograph of that officer with Mr. Floyd on the ground?
That is correct.
And that photograph, did it fairly depict what you saw when you got there first?
That is correct.
Okay. Your Honor, to that extent, I would offer Exhibit 17.
Any objection? 17.
Now, I'm going to show Exhibit 17 on the screen, and so this is what you saw when you came to that area on the curb there.
Yeah, this is what I saw, and the only reason why he's looking at me right now is because I told him it was a blood choke.
Okay, we will come back to that in a little bit. When you were there, was Mr. Floyd able to speak?
That is correctly. He was speaking in a distress way.
And what kinds of things led you to believe he was distressed?
He was vocalizing it to the officer. He said, "My stomach hurt. I can't breathe. My head hurts. I want my mom." Yeah, those are the things that he repeatedly said. He wanted to get out the car. He said he's sorry for what he did. He pleaded with my mans and told him, like, "I'm sorry. I shouldn't pretty much have to die."
And so did you feel like you could have walked closer from this vantage point on the curb?
I could have. I felt that way in a way, but it's a fear factor as well.
And at this time, so you had seen Officer Tao, and you had seen this officer in Exhibit 17
Correct.
on Mr. Floyd. Did you see any other officers at the scene at that time?
No, I did not.
All right. And so this in Exhibit 17 shows the vantage point you had, the view you had from where you were standing.
Correct. I only had that side view of the two officers and the shoulder length of George Floyd's head. Nothing else.
And when you were in this location, can you describe for the jurors what you saw about Mr. Floyd, how he appeared? Well, let me back up just for a second. You've used Mr. Floyd's name. Did you know him at the time?
I did not know Mr. Floyd at all. No real connection.
So you're using his name because you've learned since then who he is.
Correct. Can't go too many places without not knowing his name or seeing his face in Minnesota.
So when you're in this location, you first come up and you're seeing him, he's able to speak.
Correct.
Can you describe what you saw of Mr. Floyd's condition as time progressed here?
As time progressed, so when I first arrived on the scene, Mr. Floyd was vocalizing his sorriness and his pain and his distress that he was going through. The more that the knee was blocked on his neck and shimmies were going on, the more you seen Floyd fade away and slowly fade away, and like the fish in a bag, you seen his eyes slowly, pale out and again slowly roll to the back of his eyes. And so this is what I seen, this is what I heard, and that's how, what it was. Like, he was going through distress because of the knee, and he vocalized it, that I can't breathe, I need to get up, and I'm sorry. And his eyes slowly rolled to the back of his head. You seen the blood coming out of his nose. You heard him tell him before he stopped speaking that my stomach hurts, and those most of the times is the last bowel movement of your life. So from there on, he was lifeless. He didn't move. He didn't speak. He didn't have no life in him, no more on his body movements.
During that time period, did you notice anything about his breathing that was significant to you?
Yes, just like in MMA, you could tell when someone gets tired, or you could tell when someone's getting choked out or things like that. His breathing was getting tremendously heavy and tremendously harder for him to breathe, and you actually could hear him. You could see him struggling to actually gasp for air while he was trying to breathe, and I mean he barely could move while he was trying to get air.
As you were standing there, did others gather around?
Correct. At the moment, I was the most vocalist person out there pleading for Floyd's life because I felt like it was definitely in the wrong. And there was at one point in time a medic came on scene and she spoke on checking pulse, what made me even go even more harder because I heard it and then I registered in it like, oh, you do need to check his pulse. Oh, he is not moving. Like, oh, you just killed this man, you know? And so her expertise was like, look, he's fading away. You need to check his pulse. She's asking him multiple times. I'm asking him multiple times. No one checked his pulse.
Do you remember Officer Tao saying anything during this time period?
Yeah, he did what American does, and he blamed it on drugs for being a black man on the ground.
Let me just tell
Sorry
you
about that. Yeah.
What did he say about drugs?
He said, "This is what drugs do to you," and I replied, "This is not what drugs do to you."
So, did that Officer Tao saying that help the situation?
No, it didn't. If I'll be honest with you, it pissed me off more because that wasn't the case. You know what I mean?
So, when you were there, seeing this, did you draw on your training and experience in wrestling and mixed martial arts to draw some conclusion about what this officer in Exhibit 17 was doing?
Can you go ahead and repeat that?
Yep, it's kind of a long question.
Yes, it was.
As you're standing there, seeing what you've described to the jury, did you draw on your training and experience in wrestling and mixed martial arts to get an idea of what this officer was doing physically there?
Correct. Yeah, so like as I'm standing there and observing everything, before I even spoke, if you've seen the video, I watched what was going on, and as he's positioned here before I even spoke to the officer, I watched the position, one, of where the position of the neck or the knee was on the neck, you know, two, what body movements was going on while the knee was on the neck, and then three, what was the condition of George Floyd while he was going through this torture. One was that the neck was diagonal across the throat, which on a blood choke you would tack the side of the neck, you know, and which you're in a Kimura or side chokes or things like that, you want to tack the side of the neck to cut the circulation of the breathing from your person, and then to get the choke tighter, you hit different shimmies, which I felt the officer on top was shimmying to actually get the final choke in while he was on top to get the kill choke, because a side choke or a blood choke can ultimately turn into death, and that's what we've seen here.
And so,
Jury is to disregard the last statement by the witness.
just for the record, the last statement about leading to
The last statement. Proceed.
And so, did you think, based on your training experience, that this looked like a blood choke?
That is correct.
And did you say that to the officer?
That's correct.
And how did he respond when you said that to him?
He looked at me right here. It's the only time he looked at me. When I said it was a blood choke, it's the only time he looked up. We looked each other dead in our eyes. Yeah, and when I said it, he acknowledged it.
And
like we're looking at each other right here.
okay.
Last statement is sustained as non-responsive.
And so when,
Question.
I'm sorry. And Mr. Williams, from that vantage point depicted in Exhibit 17, that officer, do you see that person present in the courtroom today?
That's correct. He's standing right there.
In order to ask the record to reflect he's identified the defendant?
It will so reflect.
When you were there at the scene, Did you at one point tell the officers that you were trained at the academy?
That is correct.
And what did you mean by academy?
A shortening for the Mixed Martial Arts Academy.
Now, as this was happening, did you, or I'm sorry, did other people eventually come to the scene?
That is correct.
And I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 184. Before we put that up, Your Honor, I would offer Exhibit 184. It's not on there. All right, we'll come back to that later. When this crowd was there, do you recall roughly how many people were there?
No, I do not.
At any time, did you hear anybody threaten to harm the officers?
No. Well, I wouldn't say harm. I mean, some kid came, the kid that might have called the police, or I'm not sure exactly from when I talked to him after the situation, but he did come out once he realized what was going on, and he almost like tried to rile the crowd back up, and I just kind of was like, nah, just chill out, it's too late, you can't do that, just go back inside. So that was the only incident I recall of.
And when you did that to him, did he go back inside?
Yeah, he went back inside crying. He was a younger kid.
Now, earlier you mentioned the term shimmy.
Correct.
Which I've just been spelling S-H-I-M-M-Y. Good enough?
Yeah, good enough. you never gave it a spelling of it, but yeah, shimmy.
And so that's a move that you learned in your training for mixed martial arts holds.
That is correct.
And what's the purpose of doing a shimmy?
To get the choke tighter, to close the gap of the air between your arm and the neck.
And were there times that you saw things that you thought you recognized as a shimmy by this officer on Mr. Floyd?
That is definitely correct.
Your Honor, just for the record, we are going to show a portion of a video that I think counsel will stipulate to its admissibility. We'll lay full foundation for it tomorrow, and I'm only going to show a portion of it for this witness today. And that's Exhibit 15.
Any objection to the partial? Exhibit 15 will be received, subject to later foundation.
Now, Mr. Williams, you did not take any video at the scene yourself.
That is correct. No video.
And we had an opportunity to show you a video earlier, and did that video fairly and accurately depict what you were seeing there?
From a live angle, yes. From myself, yes.
All right. What I'm going to do is play a portion of Exhibit 15, and it's the time period roughly when you are there. And while we play it, I would just ask that you explain to the jury the things that you saw you would consider a shimmy, and just sort of explain how what it is that you're seeing to make you think that.
Correct.
Is that all right?
Yes.
All right. So we'll do Exhibit 15 starting at 44 seconds.
Let me breathe, please, man. I've been trying to help out with you. So I breathe with this man.
So now he just did it right there. You see his foot is on his toe is pointed down, and you will see a small gesture in his back foot like this. And that's just the pressure you push more down between his knee, George's head, and the concrete, and cut off circulation.
All right, and we'll continue on that, please.
Yeah, he just did it again.
And we saw that movement there that moves
Correct.
the knee on
And
the
his
neck.
foot, this time his foot came up off the ground, so no foot on the ground, so all the pressure is on his neck.
And you're talking about the foot on the same leg as the knee.
Yep, so correct. So it's the same foot on the knee. So it's like this is a choke here. So this is, for instance, my neck here. And then for me to close this, I shimmy, I shimmy, I shimmy, I shimmy, I shimmy. And now I close the choke on the side of the neck.
And just for the
So I mean,
record,
like, shimmy.
sorry,
Yeah.
just for the record, you're demonstrating with your arms. How
Yep, I'm demonstrating with my arms. So, that's choke, from neck here, and for instance, my neck would be from here, so I would have this across from here, and then I'm closing it off here, pretty much the angle of his knee, and then every time I'm shimmying, I'm getting this right here to close the gap closer within my neck, and it's the same way that you can do without having the neck across here.
So we'll continue on with the video then.
What do you want? I can breathe.
They just did it again. They did it again. They did it again.
Bro, get up, get in the car, man. I will. Get up, get in the
It's
car.
just a small gestures, and then you'll see his shoulders slowly swag. Sorry.
Okay. So
Oh, sorry.
yeah. So what we'll do is we'll wait. We've stopped the video at this portion, and if you could just explain what you're seeing here,
Correct.
that leads you to believe this is a shimmy type move.
So explain now.
Correct.
Okay, cool. So the gestures and the movements is from his shoulders and the top, and he's just doing it with his knees. Not it's not an actual choke on with the hands. Now he's actually putting the same pressure as you would with your neck. And like I said, every time his shoulder is moving, he's pushing that pressure down on his neck from the shoulders to the knees, all the way from this ankle. And you will see his shoulder shift, and then you'll see the bottom of his knee shift, and his foot come off. The one time he took his foot off the ground and put multiple pressure. Now his foot's not on the ground. He's driving off his far foot.
And as you're seeing this, are you also seeing things on Mr. Floyd's face that you testified to earlier?
Correct.
All right. So let's continue with the video then.
Get up, get in the car.
Mama,
Get up and get in the car right.
I can't.
Get y'all the opportunity to get in, bro. I told you can't win.
My knee.
You can't
My neck.
win, man.
I'm through.
I know you didn't never, you didn't listen.
That's the food. My stomach hurts. My neck hurts. Everything hurts.
seated. Be seated, please. Members of the jury, we had a major technical glitch here. Part of the reason why we are televising the trial is because this is such a small courtroom that in order for it to truly be a public trial, we have some feeds that are going to other parts of the building where family members are at. And that has gone down. And we don't want the family members to be deprived of, obviously, being able to see because we don't have such limited seating here. So we are going to shut it down for today. We're going to let you go. It's almost about that time anyway. We're going to beg Mr. Williams' patience and have him come back tomorrow to finish his testimony. But for you, let's get back here. Hopefully follow the sheriff's deputy's instructions regarding reporting, and we will see tomorrow where we'll start up again with testimony at 9:30. So have a good night. Don't watch the news, and do what you can not to talk to people about the case. And thank you so much. Yeah, leave your notepads and we'll collect them. And counsel, let's go into chambers after.
I just want to say that, I came to this country when I was 18, just finished high school, came over here. I went to U.S. Army to serve 20 years, active duty, 24/7, and retire, okay? For too long, I have put up with a lot of shit in silence. Excuse me the language. Too afraid to speak out, fearing more abuse and discrimination. Yeah. Then when I came out of the Army, I said, I'm going to make it a better community where I go to, wherever I live to serve. I do my best, do what is right. And then, in the last few years, things are just getting worse and worse. But there are some ignorant people that will come up to me and say that I don't look American or patriotic enough. People question my patriotism, that I don't look American enough. They could not get over this face. I want to show you something. I want to tell you, because I'm not afraid. I don't have to live in fear, intimidation, or insults. I'm 69 years old, and I'm going to show you what patriotism, the questions about patriotism looks like. Here is my proof. This is sustained through my service in the U.S. military. Now, is this patriot enough? I'm not ashamed to walk around anymore. Before I felt inhibited. People look at me strange. And dare to question me, my loyalty to this country. I don't look American enough. Now, last I read the U.S. Constitution, we the people, we are all the same. We are equal. Not this, you are more superior, you are not. We are all the same. We all have, even I have some mindless prejudice sometimes that I caught myself. Oh, I don't like the way you dress, it's not the same. But you know, prejudice is hate. And that hate, it can be changed. We are human. You know, we need to be kinder, gentler to one another, because we are all the same. We are one human being on this earth.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here, and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.
Hello, everyone. Namaste. It is a pleasure and an honor to be here in India. Everyone, please sit. Who can sit? Rest, it's warm. We are thrilled to be here and to have a chance to spend time with so many outstanding young people from St. Xavier's College and so many other schools across Mumbai. Now, this is my first trip to India, but it is not my first exposure to India's wonderful culture and people. You see, I grew up in Chicago, which is a city with one of the largest Indian American communities in our country. And of course, last year, as you know, we were proud to host Prime Minister Singh and Mrs. Kaur for our very first state visit and dinner. It was a beautiful evening under a tent on the south lawn of the White House, and we got to hear some pretty great Bhangra as well. I danced there too. So I have really been looking forward to this trip for a very long time. The time that we spend with young people during our travel is very special to both me and to the President. When I was your age, I never dreamed of traveling to countries like this and meeting with young people like all of you. In fact, there were a lot of things that I had never imagined for myself growing up, including having the honor of serving as my country's First Lady. My family didn't have a lot of money. My parents never went to college. I grew up in a little bitty apartment in a working class neighborhood on the south side of Chicago. My parents worked hard to pay the bills and to keep a roof over our heads. But even though my parents couldn't give us material things, they gave us something much more precious. They gave me and my brother strong values. They taught us to treat others with dignity and respect. They taught us to push for excellence in every single thing we did. They taught us to be humble and to be grateful for everything we had. They taught us to put every last bit of effort into our education and to take pride in our work. They taught us that our circumstances didn't define us, and that if we believed in ourselves, if we made the most of every single opportunity, we could build our own destinies and accomplish anything we put our minds to. And I try every single day to take those lessons to heart. And the fact that all of you are here today tells me that we all share these same values, that we all learn these same lessons. You're here today because, like me and my husband, you believe in your dreams, and you're working hard every single day to fulfill them. More importantly, you're here because you've committed to something greater than yourselves. You're here not just because of your academic and extracurricular activities and achievements, but because of what you've done to give back to your schools and to your communities. Your willingness to serve is critical for all that lies ahead once you finish your education. Because the truth is, pretty soon, the responsibilities for building our future will fall to all of you. Soon, we're going to be looking to your generation to make the discoveries and build the industries that will shape our world for decades to come. We'll be looking to you to protect our planet. We're going to be looking to you to lift up our most vulnerable citizens. We're going to be looking to you to heal the divisions that too often keep us apart. And I believe that you and your peers around the world are more than up to the challenge. Because I've seen it firsthand right here in India. Just yesterday, I had the wonderful opportunity to visit an organization called Make a Difference. It's an amazing program designed and run by young adults who recruit other young people, outstanding college students like themselves, to mentor and teach children who, as the founder said, haven't had the same chances in life as many of the mentors have had. These young volunteers understand and believe in something very simple, that all children, regardless of their circumstances, deserve the same chance to get educated and to build productive and successful lives. And I know that many of you here today are doing equally important work in your communities and your schools. Everything from holding camps for kids in need, to teaching computer literacy skills, to finding new ways to conserve energy. And let me tell you, this work is amazing, and it is vitally important. And that is why, as First Lady, I have tried my best to engage young people, not just in the United States, but around the world, letting them know that we believe in them, but more importantly, that we need them. We need you. We need you to help solve the great challenges of our time. And that's also why, when my husband travels abroad, he doesn't just meet with heads of state in parliaments and in palaces. He always meets with young people like all of you. That's why he's been working to expand educational exchanges and partnerships between the United States, India, and countries around the world. Right now, more Indian students like you come to study in the United States than from any other country. And I'm proud to see that so many American students are doing the same thing right here in India, building the types of friendships and relationships that will last a lifetime. Our hope is to provide more Indian and American young people with these types of opportunities to continue to connect and share ideas and experiences. And finally, my husband is also working to encourage young entrepreneurs everywhere to start businesses, to improve the health of our communities, and to empower our young women and girls. Because it is never too late or too early to start changing this world for the better. So I want to end today by congratulating you all, congratulating you on everything you're doing. We are so proud of you. I want to encourage you to keep dreaming. Keep dreaming big, huge, gigantic dreams, not just for yourselves, but for your communities and for our world. And finally, I want to urge you today to ask my husband some tough questions, all right? Be tough. He loves doing events like this. This brightens his day, but you got to keep him on his toes, all right? So, if you promise me that, without further ado, I would like to introduce my husband, the President of the United States, Barack Obama.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Everybody, please have a seat. Have a seat. Namaste. It is such a pleasure to be here. Now, I have to say, first of all, I don't like speaking after Michelle because she's very good. Also because she teases me. You notice how she said for you to all ask tough questions. If you want to ask easy questions, that's fine. But on behalf of Michelle and me, I want to thank St. Xavier's University. I want to thank Rector D'Souza. I want to thank Principal, I want to get this right, Moscar Enas. But it's a little smoother than that when you say it. I want to thank Vice Principal Amonkar and all of you for being such gracious hosts. And I know it's hot out here today. For you to be so patient with me, I'm very grateful to you. I also want to thank the city of Mumbai and the people of India for giving us such an extraordinary welcome. In a few minutes, I'll take some questions. I come here not just to speak, but also to listen. I want to have a dialogue with you. And this is one of the wonderful things that I have a chance to do as President of the United States. When I travel, we always try to set up a town hall meeting where we can interact with the next generation, because I want to hear from you. I want to find out what your dreams are, what your fears are, what your plans are for your country. But if you will indulge me, I also want to say a few words about why I'm so hopeful about the partnership between our two countries, and why I wanted to spend some of my time here in India speaking directly to young people like yourselves. Now, as Michelle said, we have both looked forward to this visit to India for quite some time. We have an extraordinary amount of respect for the rich and diverse civilization that has thrived here for thousands of years. We've drawn strength from India's 20th century independence struggle, which helped inspire America's own civil rights movement. We've marveled at India's growing economy and its dynamic democracy. And we have personally enjoyed a wonderful friendship with Prime Minister Singh and Mrs. Kaur over the last 2 years. But of course, I'm not just here to visit. I'm here because the partnership between India and the United States, I believe, has limitless potential to improve the lives of both Americans and Indians, just as it has the potential to be an anchor of security and prosperity and progress for Asia and for the world. The U.S.-India relationship will be indispensable in shaping the 21st century. And the reason why is simple. As two great powers and as the world's two largest democracies, the United States and India share common interests and common values. Values of self-determination and equality. Values of tolerance and a belief in the dignity of every human being. Already on this trip, I've seen those shared interests and values firsthand. We share a commitment to see that the future belongs to hope and not fear. And I was honored to stay at the Taj Hotel, the site of the 26/11 attacks. And yesterday, in meetings with some of the survivors, I saw firsthand the resilience of the Indian people in overcoming tragedy, just as I reaffirmed our close cooperation in combating terrorism and violent extremism in all of its forms. We also share struggles for justice and equality. I was humbled to visit Mani Bhavan, where Gandhi helped move India and the world through the strength and dignity of his leadership. We share a commitment to see that this era after globalization leads to greater opportunity for all our people. And so yesterday at a summit of business leaders and entrepreneurs, we discussed the potential for greater economic cooperation between our two countries. Cooperation that create jobs and opportunity through increased trade and investment, unleashing the potential of individuals in both our countries. And even as we are countries that look to the future with optimism, Americans and Indians draw strength from tradition and from faith. This morning, Michelle and I enjoyed the chance to join young people here in Mumbai to celebrate Diwali, a holiday that is observed not just here in India, but also in the United States, where millions of Indian Americans have enriched our country. I have to point out, by the way, if those of you had a chance to see Michelle dance, she was moving. And it was just an extraordinary gift for these young people to perform and share this wonderful tradition with us. Tomorrow in New Delhi, I'll have the opportunity to meet with Prime Minister Singh and many other leaders, and I'll have the privilege to address your parliament. And there I will discuss in greater detail our efforts to broaden and deepen our cooperation and make some specific announcements on important issues like counterterrorism and regional security, on clean energy and climate change, and on the advance of economic growth and development and democracy around the globe. Now, just as the sights I've seen and the people I've met here in Mumbai speak to our common humanity, the common thread that runs through the different issues that our countries cooperate on is my determination to take the partnership between our two countries to an entirely new level. Because the United States does not just believe, as some people say, that India is a rising power. We believe that India has already risen. India is taking its rightful place in Asia and on the global stage. And we see India's emergence as good for the United States and good for the world. But India's future won't simply be determined by powerful CEOs and political leaders, just as I know that the ties among our people aren't limited to contacts between our corporations and our governments. And that's why I wanted to speak to all of you today, because India's future will be determined by you and by young people like you across this country. You are the future leaders. You are the future innovators and the future educators. You're the future entrepreneurs and the future elected officials. In this country of more than 1 billion people, more than half of all Indians are under 30 years old. That's an extraordinary statistic, and it's one that speaks to a great sense of possibility. Because in a democracy like India's or America's, every single child holds within them the promise of greatness, and every child should have the opportunity to achieve that greatness. And most of you are probably close to 20 years old. Just think how the world has changed in those 20 years. India's economy has grown at a breathtaking rate. Living standards have improved for hundreds of millions of people. Your democracy has weathered assassination and terrorism. And meanwhile, around the globe, the Cold War is a distant memory, and a new order has emerged, one that's reflected in the 20 members of the G20 that will come together in Seoul next week, as countries like India assume a greater role on the world stage. So now the future of this country is in your hands. And before I take your questions, I want you to consider 3 questions I have for you. Questions about what the next 20 years will bring. First, what do you want India to look like in 20 years? Nobody else can answer this question but you. It's your destiny to write. One of the great blessings of living in a democracy is that you can always improve the democracy. As our founding fathers wrote in the United States, you can always forge a more perfect union. But if you look at India's last 20 years, it's hard not to see the future with optimism. You have the chance to lift another several hundreds of millions of people out of poverty. Grow even more this enormous middle class that can fuel growth in this country and beyond. You have the chance to take on greater responsibilities on the global stage while playing a leading role in this hugely important part of the world. And together with the United States, you can also seize the opportunities afforded by our times. The clean energy technologies that can power our lives and save our planet. The chance to reach new frontiers in outer space. The research and development that can lead to new industry and a higher standard of living. The prospect of advancing the cause of peace and pluralism in our own countries, but also beyond our borders. Which brings me to a second question. 20 years from now, what kind of partnership do you want to have with America? Just before I came to speak to all of you today, I visited 2 expos, right, in another courtyard here, that underscore the kind of progress we can make together. The first focused on agriculture and food security, and I was able to see innovations in technology and research which are transforming Indian farming. A farmer showed me how he can receive crop information on his cell phone. Another showed me how tools appropriately sized and weighted for women are helping her and other female farmers increase their productivity. Many of these innovations are the result of public and private collaborations between the United States and India. The same collaboration that helped produce the first green revolution in the 1960s. And tomorrow I will be discussing with Prime Minister Singh how we can advance that cooperation in the 21st century, not only to benefit India, not only to benefit the United States, but to benefit the world. India can become a model for countries around the world that are striving for food security. And the second expo I toured focused on the ways that innovation is empowering Indian citizens to ensure that democracy delivers for them. So I heard directly from citizens in a village hundreds of miles away through e-Panchayat. I saw new technologies and approaches that allow citizens to get information or to fight corruption, monitor elections, find out whether their elected officials are actually going to work, holding government accountable. And while these innovations are uniquely India's, their lessons can be applied around the world. So earlier this year at the UN, I called for a new focus on open societies that support open government and highlighted their potential to strengthen the foundation of freedoms in our own countries while living up to the ideals that can light the world. And that's what India is starting to do with some of this innovation. We must remember that in some places the future of democracy is still very much in question. Just to give you an example, there are elections that are being held right now in Burma that will be anything but free and fair based on every report that we're seeing. And for too long, the people of Burma have been denied the right to determine their own destiny. So even as we do not impose any system of government on other countries, we, especially young people, must always speak out for those human rights that are universal and the right of people everywhere to make their own decisions about how to shape their future. Which will bring me to my final question, and then you guys can start sending questions my way. How do each of you want to make the world a better place? Keep in mind that this is your world to build, your century to shape. And you've got a powerful example of those who went before you. Just as America had the words and deeds of our founding fathers to help chart a course towards freedom and justice and opportunity, India has this incredible history to draw on, millennia of civilization, the examples of leaders like Gandhi and Nehru. As I stood at Mati Bhavan, I was reminded that Martin Luther King made his own pilgrimage to that site over 50 years ago. In fact, we saw the book that he had signed. After he returned home, King said that he was struck by how Gandhi embodied in his life certain universal principles that are inherent in the moral structure of the universe. And these principles are as inescapable as the law of gravitation. Well, you have that power within you. You too must embody those principles. For even within this time of great progress, there are great imperfections. The injustice of oppression, the grinding punishment of poverty, the scourge of violent extremism and war. King and Gandhi made it possible for all of us to be here today. Me as a president, you as a citizen of a country that's made remarkable progress. Now you have the opportunity and the responsibility to also make this planet a better place. And as you do, you will have the friendship and partnership of the United States, because we are interested in advancing those same universal principles that are as inescapable as the law of gravitation. The lives that you lead will determine whether that opportunity is extended to more of the world's people, so that a child who yearns for a better life in rural India, or a family that's fled from violence in Africa, or a dissident who sits in a Burmese prison, or a community that longs for peace in war-torn Afghanistan, whether they are able to achieve their dreams. And sometimes the challenges may be incredibly hard, and in the face of darkness, we may get discouraged, but we can always draw on the light of those who came before us. I hope you keep that light burning within you, because together, the United States and India can shape a century in which our own citizens and the people of the world can claim the hope of a better life. So thank you very much for your patience, and now you can take Michelle's advice and ask me some tough questions. Thank you very much. So, we have, I think, people in the audience with microphones. And so, when they come up, if you could introduce yourself, I'd love to know who you are. We'll start with that young lady right over there.
Hi, good day, sir. How are you? I'm fine. My name is Anam. I'm from St. Xavier's College. My question to you is, what is your take or opinion about jihad or jihadi, whatever is your opinion? Like, what do you think of them?
Well,